The author can emphasize here that Balinese teachings are non-Hindu teachings originating from India. Balinese teachings are indigenous teachings of the archipelago which were brought from the island of Java by several rishis. These teachings are not called Hinduism, the original teachings of the previous Indonesian archipelago which underlie the birth of Indian Hindu teachings. That is, that teaching is the teachings of the previous civilization, namely Lemuria, and that teaching was also used during the Atlantis civilization in the archipelago. It is the original teachings of the archipelago that have spread to various parts of the world, with the characteristic character of worship of fire and sun. The teachings of the world that use these characteristics come from the archipelago. The sun god and sun worship can be found throughout most of recorded history in various forms. The following is a list of sun gods. Worship of the god Surya as a god in Africa. Onyanwu, the god Igbo is believed to live in the sun. Magic, Tenerife god of sun and light. Mawu, Dahomey the goddess associated with the sun and moon. Gai, Kamba, Kikuyu and Maasai the sun god. Veneration of Surya as a god in Aboriginal Australia. Bila, the cannibal sun goddess of Adnyamathananowi, the sun goddess who searches daily for her lost child. His torchlight is the sun. Wala, the sun goddess. Wariapranili, the sun goddess whose torch is the sun. Yi, Karaur the sun goddess, light and creation. The worship of the sun god is a god in the Aztec Huitzilopochtli, the sun and war god. Nanawatsan, the sun god. Tioyaumiki, the god of lost souls, the sun in the 6th hour of the day. Tonasha, god of the sun and ruler of the sky. Shutakuli, god of fire, day and heat. Veneration of the god Surya as a god in Baltic Sol, goddess of the sun and fertility. Veneration of Lord Surya as god in Basque. Eki, goddess of the sun and protector of mankind. The worship of the god Surya as the god in Brazil. Mary, the folk hero and sun god. Veneration of Lord Surya as a deity in Buddhism. Marisi, goddess of sky, sun and light. Surya, god of the sun. Surya Paratha, Suthra Pitaka, Pali, Theravada Buddhism. Veneration of Lord Surya as a deity in Canaan. Shapash, the sun goddess. Celtic worship of the god Surya as a god. Anya, Irish goddess of love, summer, wealth and sovereignty, associated with the sun and midsummer. Alanus, Gallic god of the sun. Healing and prophecy. Belinus, Gallic god of the sun. Gran Peb, Welsh figure occasionally constructed as god of light. Etain the Irish, sun goddess. Epona, the horse god is sometimes associated with Etain. Granus, the god associated with spa, thermal and mineral healing springs, and the sun. Olwen, a female figure often constructed as the originally Welsh sun goddess. Sulis, an English god whose name is related to the common Proto-Indo-European word for sun, and thus a cognate of Helios, Sol, Nosy and Surya, and who maintains the image of the sun, as well as the upper domains of healing and hot springs. Perhaps the de facto Celtic sun god. The worship of the god Surya as a god in China. Dumu, the sun goddess was sometimes combined with Marisi. Yuya, sun god. Shu Kai, sun star god. Zaihe, sun goddess and mother of 10 sons. Zulong, daytime dragon god. The worship of the god Surya as a god in Kemetic Bastet, the cat goddess associated with the sun. Horus, the sky god whose right eye is considered the sun and the left of the moon. Amun, the creator god sometimes identified as the sun god. Autumn, the world finisher, who represents the sun due to the set. Aten, the sun god, the disk visible from the sun. Khepri, the god of rebirth and the rising sun. Nefertum, the god of healing and beauty, who represented the first rays of the sun. Ra, the sun god. Sekhmet, the goddess of war and the sun, and sometimes calamity and desert creator. Sopdu, god of war and scorching summer sun. Ptah, god of craft, art and fertility, sometimes said to represent the sun at night. Khnum, the god of the setting sun. Veneration of the god Surya as a god in Etruscan. Albina, goddess of dawn and protector of ill-fated lovers. Thesson, goddess of dawn, associated with new life. Uzel, Etruscan equivalent of Helios, Germany. Sol. Greek worship of the sun god as god Electrona, goddess of the morning and man of waking sense. Athena, goddess of wisdom and craft, with characteristics of the sun god. Apollo, the Olympian god of light, sun, prophecy, healing, plague, archery, music and poetry. Eos, the Titan goddess of the dawn. Helios, the Titan god of the sun. Hyperion, the Titan god of light. Neaera, the goddess of the rising sun. Phanes, the protogenoi of light and life, described as golden wings, surrounded by the signs of the zodiac and likened to Mithras. Thea, the goddess of Titan associated with the sun. The worship of Lord Surya as a god in Hinduism. Agni, god of fire, associated with the sun. Aryaman, sun god. Mitra, god of honesty, friendship, contract, meeting and morning sun. Ravi, sun god. Saranya, goddess of dawn. Saatri, deity sun at sunrise and sunset. Surya, the sun god. The worship of Dewa Surya as a god in Hittite. Urina, sun goddess. Istanu, god of the sun and judgment. The worship of Dewa Surya as a god in Inca. Inti, the sun god and patron deity of the Inca Empire. Chaska, Venus, or Chaska Quilor, star of Venus, is the planetary goddess of dawn and dusk. Akaika, the sun god worshipped in Alaska. Melina, the sun goddess, is most often found in Greenland legends. The worship of the god Surya as a god in Lusitania. Endovlicus, the god of health and safety. Worshipped both as a sun god and a chthonic one. Netu, recognized to be a god of the sun and war. Worship of Lord Surya as a deity in Maori. Au, the personification of the day. Tama Nui Te Ra, the personification of the sun. Veneration of Dewa Surya as a god in Maya. Akin, the sun god, the bearer of doubt and the protector against evil associated with darkness. Kinik Ahau, the sun god. Hunapu, one of the hero Maya twins. He turns into the sun while his brother turns into the moon. Tohul, a god associated with thunder, lightning and sunrise. Worship of the god Surya as a god in Mesopotamia. Shamash, Akkadian god of sun and justice. Utu, Sumerian god of sun and justice. Minoan, a sun goddess of several kinds. Perhaps the serpent goddess. Miska Su, Miska, the sun god and husband of Chia. Moon, Native American mythology. Y, Lakota sun god. The worship of the sun god as a god in the Slavic Belobog, a reconstructed deity of light and sun who may or may not have been worshipped by the Slavs. Dazbog, the sun god or the sun god. Radgast, god, fertility and plants, associated with war and the sun, which may be or may not have been worshipped by the pagan Slavs. Zorya, the two daughters of Dazbog. Zorya Utrenyaya, the morning star, who opens the palace gates every morning for the departure of this sun train. Zorya Vekernyaya, the night star, which closes the palace gates every night after returning the sun. Worship of Dewa Surya as a god in Turkey. Gun Ana, the Turkish sun goddess. Koyash, the sun god. Zoroastrianism. Haver Shada, Sun Yazada. Zunism, the Zunbil dynasty and the subjects of Zabulistan worship the sun, which they call Zun. They believe that the sun is the god of justice, a good power in the world and, as a result, a being that expels darkness, and humans are allowed to live one more day. Worship of the sun god as a god in Japan. Amaterasu. Amaterasu Omikami or Ohirum no Muchi no Kami is part of the religion in Japan as well as the main deity of the Shinto religion. She is seen as the sun goddess, as well as the god of the universe. The name Amaterasu comes from Amaterasu, meaning, shine in heaven. The meaning of the whole, Amaterasu Omikami, is, God who shines in the sky. According to Kojiki and Nihon Shoki in Japanese mythology, the Emperor of Japan is considered to be a direct descendant of Amaterasu. Worship of Lord Surya as a god in Arabia. The statue of the priestess Saba raises her hand to pray to the sun goddess. Shamsum is the female sun god, possibly associated with the Canaanite Shapashish and the wider Middle Eastern Shamash. She was the dominant goddess of the Himyarite kingdom, and was probably still revered in some form by Bedouin for several centuries afterward. Malakbel is the sun god from the city of Palmyra in pre-Islamic Syria. It means, in Aramaic, it is, messenger of Baal, or messenger, or angel, god. The Greeks identified Malakbel with Hermes, and the Romans with Sol. He is also similar to the Babylonian sun god Shamash. Malakbel is usually accompanied by the moon god Aglibel, and is sometimes referred to as the goddess Alat. Lord Palmyrene. From left to right. Lunar god Aglibel, supreme god. Beelshaman, the sun god Malakbel. 1st century, found near Bir Wareb, Wadi Mia, Syria, Louvre Museum. Pharaoh Akhenaten and his family worship Aten. Second from left is Meriteten, who was the daughter of Akhenaten. Aten, also Aton, Egyptian JTN, is a solar disk in ancient Egyptian mythology, and originally an aspect of the god Ra. The deified Aten was the focus of the religion of Atenism founded by Amenhotep IV, who later took the name Akhenaten, died ca. 1335 BC, in the worship and confession of Aten. The worship of Dewa Surya as a god in Australia. In the mythology of the Aboriginal people from northern Australia, the Warriapranili woman sun, or Warrianpranili, is the sun goddess which is like a torch fire as the sun. Also the term for if is the personification of the sun as the Adnyamathana people call it. She is the sun goddess, according to the common trend among Indigenous Australians, who mostly regard the sun as a female god. Teachings related to the meaning and symbols of the sun in the Indonesian archipelago earlier. Hyang is the original word of the archipelago. The ancestors of our ancestors, the Kakya Saka Arya, used the symbol sun with the symbol swastika, which implies dharma, universal harmony and balance. The symbol of sun as a source light, 5 colors main light, Pankawarna, which is the basis of the philosophy of life native teachings of the archipelago, is perfectly preserved in Bali. This is not from India. The details. The white light in the east is called Purwa, the place of Hyang Iswara. The red light in the south is called Daksina, the place of Hyang Brahma. The yellow light in the west is called Pasima, the place of Hyang Mahadeva. The black light in the north is called the north, the place of Hyang Wisnu. Understand once again, this is not Hindu India. When and who was the Indian missionary who came to the archipelago carrying the term above? All colors of light in the center are called intermediate, where Hyang Siwa, Sang Hyang Siwa is the symbol of fusing of all light colors. Shiva, fusing of light, has been misinterpreted to be god of destruction. The original teachings of the archipelago that have been recorded up to now in Balinese culture are characteristics that prove the original teachings of the archipelago that spread to various parts of the world, as explained in the above section, that the Lemuria civilization was in the archipelago and continued with the Atlantis civilization, which was also centered in the archipelago. This teaching is characterized by worship of the sun or the sun. This can be proven by the existence of many ancient buildings scattered throughout the archipelago, especially on the island of Java, and in connection with sun worship this appears in the form of the Pundan Barandik building, which used to be a place for rituals to be performed. The shape of the Pundan Barandik or Pyramida building is the basic form of the building for worship of the sun. Also, Pyramida in Egypt is a form of building that originates from this land of the archipelago. And we made between them and between the countries which we bestowed upon him, several lands which were near, and we appointed between the countries distances, the journey. Walk through the cities by night and by day safely. Professor Orizio Santos said that to be able to connect the past history it took a long time, for 30 years. He researched the continent of Atlantis, which was declared missing, and that continent has now been found, namely in the state of Indonesia. Every people has a time limit, his death, when he has arrived, they will not be able to postpone it for a moment, nor can they advance it. QS 734. Then what is the connection with Plato, Greek-born philosopher, who lived 427 to 347 BC? Plato was one of the students of Socrates, the wise philosopher, who was then poisoned by the tyrannical ruler of Athens in 399 BC. After the death of his teacher, Plato had many adventures, including his travels to Egypt. In 387 BC he returned to Athens and founded the Academy, a school of science and philosophy, which later became a model for modern universities. The most famous student of the Academy was Aristotle, whose teachings had a profound influence on philosophy to this day. For the sake of maintaining the Academy, much of Plato's work has been saved. Most of his written works are in the form of letters and dialogues, the most famous of which is Republic. His written works cover subjects ranging from science to happiness, from politics to natural sciences. 2 of his dialogues, Timos and Critias, contain the only original references to the island of Atlantis, the island of Atlantis. Plato stated that tens of thousands of years ago various volcanic eruptions occurred simultaneously, causing earthquakes, melting ice, and flooding. This incident caused part of the Earth's surface to sink. That part is what he calls the lost continent or Atlantis. The latest research conducted by Professor Dr. Orizio Santos confirmed his theory that Atlantis was an area which is now called Indonesia. After doing research for 30 years, he produced the book Atlantis, The Lost Continent Finally Found, the definitive localization of Plato's Lost Civilization, 2005. Santos presents 33 comparisons of the characteristics of 12 locations on Earth that are suspected by other scholars as the site of Atlantis, such as the area, weather, natural resources, volcanoes, and farming methods, etc., which finally Santos concluded that Atlantis is Indonesia now. One of the proofs is the system of rice terraces that is unique to Indonesia, according to him, is the form adopted by the Borobudur Temple, the pyramids in Egypt, and the ancient Aztec buildings in Mexico. Eriso Santos also applies philological, linguistic, anthropological, and archaeological analysis in his research. He got a lot of clues from the reflections of historic buildings and artifacts and pyramids in Egypt, sacred temples from the Mayan and Aztec civilizations in South America, temples and historical artifacts from Hindu civilization in the Hindustan River Valley, civilization Mohenjo-daro and Harappa. Also he collected instructions from ancient manuscripts, holy scriptures of various religions such as the Bible and the Hindu holy book Rig Veda, Puranas, etc. According to Professor Dr. H. Priyatna Abdul Rashid, Ph.D., Honorary Director of the International Institute of Space Law IISL, Paris, France, it was not a coincidence when Indonesia was in 1958, on the idea of Professor Dr. Mokhtar Kusumatmaja through Law No. 4 Perpu 1960, promulgated the Joanda Declaration. Its content states that the state of Indonesia with its inland waters is a unitary territory of the archipelago. This fact was later recognized by the 1982 International Convention on the Law of the Sea. Referring to Santo's research, in the past tens of thousands of years, the territory of Indonesia was a unified continent. It is not fragmented in tens of thousands of islands as it is now. Santos determined that in the past Atlantis was a continent that stretched from the southern part of India, Sri Lanka, Sumatra, Java, Kalimantan, then eastward with Indonesia, now, as its center. In that area, there are dozens of active volcanoes and are surrounded by a unified ocean called Oriental, consisting of the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. Plato's theory explains that Atlantis is a continent that was lost due to a volcanic eruption that simultaneously erupted. At that time most parts of the world were still covered by ice sheets, Pleistocene era. With the eruption of dozens of volcanoes simultaneously, most of which were located in the territory of Indonesia, formerly, part of the continent sank and was covered by water from melting ice. These include the eruption of Mount Meru in South India and Mount Semeru, Mahameru in East Java. Then the volcanic eruption in Sumatra which formed Lake Toba with the island of Samosir, which is the peak of Mount Toba which was erupting at that time. The most violent eruption later on was Mount Krakatoa, which split parts of Sumatra and Java and others and formed the Sunda Strait.